Man, an interesting piece. I thought a very insightful piece by DJ Bieniemy at ESPN. I think it came through on Saturday, maybe, if my memory serves me, where he was kind of going through and looking at Bobby Slowik's time, right? The predictability and lack of adjustments that doomed Bobby Slowik and the Texans. A really interesting piece, obviously sourced very well by DJ Bieniemy about this team and its offense, particularly last year, but under his tenure. And of course, Bobby Slowik now on to working with as a senior passing game coordinator of sorts with the Miami Dolphins. But moves on from here, and of course, we always say it, man. When somebody moves on, then you get a little bit more of a flow of information of what actually happened. People feel a little bit more comfortable telling you, and I think we got some really insightful stuff in this piece. And it feels like it moved you in a very particular way.
Yeah, I've been trying. Y'all have, listening to this show the last few weeks, I've been trying to say, okay, let's temper the bash on Bobby stuff. I'm not going to try anymore.
Oh, wow.
I'm really not.
Why you ain't doing when he was hurt?
I
You
really
ain't say it to his face.
I gave the man the benefit of the doubt, I'm like, everybody does that. Oh, he's gone now. Like, oh, we played an up-tempo basketball style. Now we're going to slow it down. Oh, of course you are, because that sucked, or he was a disciplinarian. Now we're going to be more player-friendly. Of course you are, because that sucked. People just automatically, default to, yeah, that guy was awful. I'm not going to defend him anymore because it seems like that guy was really exactly what we speculated that he was, and that was not very flexible, certainly not very adaptable to the players, because sources around the league and in that building and a player, have flat out said, a lot of times the anonymous quotes, you sort of like, we'll see, I believe it. I believe that was a strong player. I mean, a player who stated a strong opinion when they said, I don't think we had a true identity of what the bleep we wanted to do.
Yeah. So
that's not, that's not just sort of like backhanded insult. No, that's direct.
Right.
Yeah.
No. And I mean, these are things that you could see and that various people who, cover the team and watch this team discussed over that time period. It's interesting to get like that interior sourcing via DJ Bieniemy and ESPN to kind of confirm that that's what they felt in the building. I think that these things can be insightful also and helpful. All right, what were they feeling, right? Or did they believe in this and then ultimately, just move on? Or did you see things? And I mean, some of the quotes in a segment I like to call reading. We simply weren't good enough offensively, as team source told ESPN. We had all season to make adjustments and improvements, and it never happened, which that is a hugely damning thing about this team. And you could see it again. Like, you could see it time and time again. We didn't see real adjustments until real late in the season, when it's fair to assume that somebody stepped in and forced those adjustments to be had. Otherwise, you were in the same place doing the same thing and not seeing results. And then ultimately you mentioned that a player told ESPN, quote, I don't think we had a true identity of what the bleep we wanted to do. And those might be the biggest indictments. And, of course, those were the things that I think people latched onto most from this article. And there's a lot more in there that I found to be interesting, right? And there's some more quotes that I'll read. But more importantly, like, what does that then do for you in spinning this forward, right, and trying to make this a positive? Because it does feel like in hiring Nick Caley, they found somebody to at least address those things in particular. Well, one of those things, because I feel like the idea of adjustments feels like something that Nick Caley will do. I mean, we heard similar things in his opening press conference. I will say, we don't really have a great idea that there is going to be a solid, because as of right now, at a very early juncture of his tenure as the offense coordinator, we haven't really gotten anything near concrete on what this offense will look like, which is fair.
No,
however, it is a space to watch as we go through.
No, we haven't, but we talked about we didn't know what the bleep we wanted to do quote, and that's the one that's grabbing the headlines. The second one you read is the one that really opened my eyes to, everything that I'm not going to temper anything when it comes to Bobby. He was inflexible, rigid, and frankly, when they say, we had all season to make adjustments and improvement, and it never happened, that tells me that C.J. Stroud was in the middle of it, because everything trickles down from the quarterback. I find it almost impossible to believe now that C.J. Stroud, at some point when he was getting pummeled, didn't say, hey, what if we did this? And on top of that, coaches. I think it's a very big tell that Cole Popovich is still on this coaching staff, because a lot of times if it was just a complete fail offensively, everybody would have been replaced. The fact that they left Cole Popovich tells me that at least one coach, him, and I'm speculating, but him, tried to get Bobby Slowik to block a different way, to approach the run game or protections a different way, and he didn't do it. The fact that he said didn't make all season to make adjustments and improvements, and it never happened, that points directly to Bobby Slowik and directly to not being flexible and listening to people.
Yeah, and speaking towards the idea of not making adjustments, right? I think that there was a lot of things that were here, including a player saying when teams would take away what we wanted to do, we just didn't have answers for it. That is a huge indictment, right? There's not really a great reason for you to have a big brain if that brain does not give you other answers. And I think that some of that is indicative of being inexperienced. Like, you don't have the experience to call upon to say, okay, well, in various different circumstances, these things have worked, so I'll go to those places. But it is problematic that it did not feel like you did not have answers. How about this when it comes to, and this was something I think you were strong on, another excerpt. Stroud wasn't allowed to change protections at the line of scrimmage, often in Slowik's offense. It was the center's responsibility. A lot of the calls were considered basic, according to team sources, according to a team source, I should say, as simple as having 3 offensive linemen zone blocking one side while the other backside blockers were one-on-one in protection against backside rushes. But the lack of communication within those blocking plans versus stunts led to free rushers, which is why Stroud faced 52 unblocked pressures, which was the second most in the NFL, right? And then, of course, Strasser's approach wasn't easy for some players either, according to a team source, as he struggled to connect with the offensive line. But the woes weren't all on Slowik or Strasser. Sometimes the players just failed to execute. And that last part we agree with. But going back to the first part about the idea of, like, hey, the protections at the line and it being simple and there not being communication within it, like, that is so damning.
He treated C.J. Stroud, from what I can gather and from what we've heard and speculated about on this show for the last few weeks, is he treated C.J. Stroud like a high school quarterback. No, you do it this way. Here's your first read. Here's your second read, etc. And that's not how you should treat a quarterback like C.J. Stroud. And in fact, this whole is encouraging to me, like, because because there's no way that Nick Caley's coming in and saying, oh, yeah, we're going to do that. We're not going to trust the line. We're not going to change our blocking assignments. We're not going to trust C.J. Stroud to help with protections and such. It's encouraging because I feel like he's going to get with C.J. Stroud or the quarterback coach or whomever and say, listen, we're listening to you now. Your voice is going to be heard, and we're going to allow you to do this, this, and this. It's actually an encouraging thing. But, boy, I'm done defending Bobby Slowik. It seems like it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a good way of looking at it. And, of course, if we're willing to take Nick Caley at his word, which I imagine we probably are, especially at this early juncture, it seems like, again, player-focused approach. You know, it's going to be not forcing a square peg into a round hole. It seems like very much a lot of what he said will combat kind of these things. And so it was really insightful to kind of get some real confirmation from the interior of what this is looking like. How do you feel about this, John, though, before we move on from 713? I put a lot of this blame on the head coach. Hold D'Amico accountable, too. He knew he was who he was, and the character not a good sign. I don't know that this speaks necessarily fully to Bobby's character. I feel like that might be a bridge too far. But I think that, D'Amico probably has a level of accountability to be held on allowing this kind of to operate in the way that it did. But how much is there to be said for letting that man do what he wants to do while he's in that position, and then judging him accordingly when you get to the place when it's time to?
I think D'Amico would tell you his biggest mistake was he just trusted Bobby Slowik. And I don't see that happening again. I could see his head in some of these early week meeting rooms a lot more, asking coaches and assistant coaches, what do you think we're doing? Having a better communication. Because let's keep in mind, he's the defensive coordinator with Matt Burke, and I'm sure he spent a lot of time on the defensive side.
Yeah, but I mean,
but that's not his job. But that's not his job.
The job is head coach. Yeah. If you want to be the defensive coordinator, that's cool. The responsibility ultimately still falls all the way around.
I think you're going to see a lot from D'Amico this year because now it's like I think he's calling the plays on defense and all that stuff. He got a lot of hand in the defensive stuff, but now you kind of got to overlook everything now.
I think D'Amico will tell you that. I think that's going to be the biggest change.
Yeah. So we should see what D'Amico really is as a head coach, overlooking everything now, rather than I'm gonna focus on the defense and I trust you to have the offense.
Totally agree.
And it does seem like he's accepting that responsibility. That the hectic nature of trying to do all of these things are relatively new head coach. I think that he's learning, hey, man, there's a lot more to it, and there's a reason why this job is a job in and of itself, right, outside of being a play caller. He's definitely going to have to, answer for, or maybe not answer specifically for it in a way that I think we would talk about, but he's definitely going to have to account for how to be better at managing those things and being more hands-on and more attentive to what's happening offensively. But I think that, look, if we're willing to take the entry-level press conference for what it is at face value, it seems like some of these things at least will be there will be a focus and a clear effort to make sure that these don't happen again next year for your Houston Texans.